And somehow going to class just didn't seem as important as rehearsing and playing for every frat at FSU. In the summer of 1966, we packed our gear in the back of our guitar player and singer Scott Boyer's car and headed to Daytona Beach to make it big. Well, that bombed big time. We auditioned at all of the clubs there, and they all thought we were the best band they had ever heard, but the universal rejections came because you can't dance to it. We were doing our last audition at a place called the Martinique when in walked the Beatles. Of course, it wasn't actually John, Paul, George, and Ringo, but the way people acted, it may as well have been. It was a band called the Allman Joys, and walking in the lead was this dude with long blonde hair, followed closely by another dude with even longer and blonder hair. This was, of course, Duane and Gregg Allman. We played our set and got the usual, "You guys are great, but they can't dance to it," from the club owner. Waiting for us backstage, however, were those two blonde guys, and they were blown away with what we had just played. We explained our predicament and got an invite to come hang out at 100 Van Avenue, where they lived with their mother, Mama A. After a few days, we packed it up, stuck our tails between our legs, and headed back to Jacksonville, where a few weeks later, I got a call from Duane asking me to come to a club in downtown Jacksonville because their drummer had just quit. I, of course, said, "I'm on my way." I played with them for a night or two, and Duane, knowing that this club's owner was a huge Dylan fan, got our band an audition, and we took over the Allman Joys gig. That lasted for around 8 months. Then we hit the Southern Club circuit, where we would run into Duane and Gregg from time to time. Sometime in, I believe, 1967, we were in Daytona and stopped by 100 Van Avenue and found Duane and Gregg, fresh from a run at the big time in L.A. as the Hourglass. We decided to join forces and played for the next few months as the Bitter End, the Hourglass, or the 31st of February. We had signed a record contract with Vanguard Records, and the Bitter End Club in New York would not let us use that name. We took this version to Miami to record our second record for Vanguard. You can hear 2 of those recordings on Duane's retrospective, Skydog. One of them was the very first recording of Melissa. When we finished there, Gregg flew back to L.A. and found out that the Hourglass's record company, Liberty, which has no relation to the current label of the same name, would release the rest of that band from their contracts if he would stay and record solo. I was with Duane in Daytona when he got the call from Gregg. I believe if Duane could have gotten through the phone, he would have strangled Gregg on the spot. Well, Duane had been offered a gig as a studio player in Muscle Shoals, and without Gregg, he just didn't feel like our band was going to go anywhere, so he packed it up and headed to Alabama. Back to my opening sentence. Luckily for me, before I enrolled in college again, there came a knock on my door, and there was Duane with an incredible-looking black man. Duane, in his usual way, introduced us to each other as Jaimoe, his new drummer, and Butch, his old drummer. He hung around for a while and then took off to meet up with Barry Oakley at the house on Riverside Drive, where Barry's then band, Second Coming, was living. He left Jaimoe at my house, and for the first time in my middle-class white life, I had to get to know and deal with a black man. It changed me profoundly. Over 44 years later, Jaimoe and I are still best of friends, and I am very proud to call him my brother. I could go on with this story for several hundred pages, but that is what Alan Paul has written, and that is what I am writing a foreword for. I will let Alan tell the story of the Allman Brothers Band, as he has been able to uncover it from many long interviews with me and everyone else that he could get to, who was there during many of the band's incarnations. There have been several attempts to write the epic rock and roll story, but so far, I haven't read anything that really gets it. They tend to be written by newspaper writers, and the books wind up being very long articles that deal with who did what, where, and when. None have delved into the how and why. I've read Alan Paul's articles about us going back many years. I've read his book, Big in China, and the one thing that jumps from those pages is how and why. In Big in China, Alan finds himself in as alien an environment as possible and still finds a way to assemble an extremely good band that he educates in American blues/jazz rock, as exemplified by the Allman Brothers Band. Alan does an incredible job.